Hey, this is Ross Payton. Welcome to Night Clerk Radio. This is episode 22, The Music of Unsolved Mysteries. With me, as always, is, of course, Burke. How you doing, Burke?
I'm good, Ross. How are you doing?
I'm very excited about this episode. This is definitely some incredibly haunted music. So haunted, we've attracted another guest, someone who demanded to be on. So Caleb from the Mix 6 and RPPR, many other podcasts. How you doing?
Yes, Ross, I'm actually here to tell you I'm a lost sibling of yours. Update. Yeah, I was given away by the church to aliens, but I'm back now. So,
oh man,
finally reunited.
Yeah, finally. That's a solved mystery now. You heard it here first.
Now you're eligible for Peyton presents every year.
Yeah. I'm really just trying to horn in on the Leland gifts.
Oh, that was better. I thought you were going to say you were a ghost, which was going to be highly disappointing.
Well, that's a different update.
Oh, okay. Oh, no.
Which will have a different bespoke update song that I will be excited about. Yeah.
My God.
So, yeah, the music of Unsolved Mysteries is something I think, that has sort of laid the foundations for the current popularity of synthwave, more so than like any other single movie or TV show. It had a generational, traumatizing, scarring impact on so many people, yet almost invisible in how insidious it is. It was just sort of there, but like it wasn't like a cultural juggernaut like the X-Files was or Halloween, but it was always lingering there. Just Robert Stack in the shadows in a trench coat telling us about all these murders and all these people going missing. Yeah, I'm very excited about it. So yeah, if you weren't aware of Unsolved Mysteries, it's a very long running show. Robert Stack, the host, would narrate about various unsolved mysteries, actual real life mysteries, unsolved murders, kidnappings, disappearances, missing siblings. But they'd also, I don't know when the show started doing that, or maybe it was from the beginning, but they started doing some like sci-fi fantasy bullshit with ghosts and UFOs and all kinds of
the paranormal.
Yeah, the paranormal. Yeah.
If you are somehow aware of Daria, but not Unsolved Mysteries, it's basically Sick Sad World.
Oh, yeah.
With less aware narration. It's basically Sick Sad World. Like, it's like 5 alien abduction stories and then an actual killing that ended up being from the Golden State Killer. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, speaking of haunted, the show has, like, actual crimes that occur, but it's also haunted by bullshit, which makes it very much up your guys' alley. Like, I think it's the quintessential American generator of whatever genre this show would be dedicated to, because it is very much about, like, oh, yeah, this kid's actually still missing, and you're watching a dramatization of it, and then, like, Meemaw came back as an alien and stole our cows. Like, here's an interview with a bunch of wacky people we found in a trailer park, and the resolution is 180p or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I did not appreciate what a shared 90s experience Unsolved Mysteries was. I don't know why. Like, it was a major TV show. Any other kid would have watched it, but just this kind of came up because we talked it, and like a friend of ours is like terrified of the theme song to the point where he like mutes it if I play it. And we were like watching it on Prime on our movie nights, and like everybody was real into it. And there's something to this Unsolved Mysteries love. I did not realize.
I'm terrified of how great the horn line is.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's that, I know it's probably synth, but I like to imagine like just a guy with a muted trumpet in that fog machine behind Robert Stack at all times, just moaning it out. Yeah.
Just some nerd in a 90s living room computer recording studio. Little synth.
I think I understand why you missed out, why it's so, like, didn't miss, but like forgot it was so seminal to the 90s. Because like, I wanted to test this out. I think there are people who just watch Unsolved Mysteries. Sarah is one of them. She will just watch episodes, and I'll be like, this sounds like it's like, oh no, this was for a lost sibling segment. I'm like, you're right, it was. When you're picking out segments.
Yes.
Which is half the fun of listening to Unsolved Mysteries, is picking out what segment it would have been attached to, which is a unique game. But the thing is I don't have memories of watching Unsolved Mysteries. I have memories of Unsolved Mysteries being on because I was waiting for something else, or something I was watching had ended and Unsolved Mysteries was on, or like watching it with someone like Sarah or my dad. But like, unlike a lot of other television shows, I have no concept of a singular episode of Unsolved Mysteries. It's all just like this paste in my mind of undifferentiated Unsolved Mysteries.
I have like faint fragments of segments. So when I watched the first and like part of the second season on Amazon earlier during quarantine, just like, God, what else am I going to do? I watched Unsolved Mysteries. There were segments that I remembered watching as a kid. And I sort of have those fragments of memory, similar for like Rescue 911, where I just have like weird traumatic memories of like various accidents befalling teenagers.
Yeah. They got to stop jumping off bridges.
Yeah. I definitely remember seeing the show, but I don't remember like specific segments. I mean, the theme song, I loved even as a kid. I wasn't scared by it, but I just I dug that shit. But like, if you think about it, it's very interesting because they talk about the subject matter is so gruesome and lurid, you know, all of this true crime stuff.
And eclectic, like psychics, ghosts, aliens. Yeah. They couldn't pick a theme.
Yeah, it's that content grind. But like the production methods were so incredibly cheap. And the thing that always struck me is, even as a kid, it just like baffled or fascinated me. I just couldn't wrap my mind around the fact that they would always try to use the actual people who were involved in the mystery instead of actors. Like they just like, hey, your brother was murdered. Can we use you to recreate the last couple of days of his life? We'll hire an actor to play your brother. But yeah, can you do that? And they're like, okay, yeah, that'll help solve my brother's murder. And just
you cannot charge on the company account a trip to a small town 2 hours outside of Boise, Idaho. What is even the point of being in television? That's what my question is.
But the look of the show is so mundane and so cheap.
Oh, yeah.
But like compared with the content, the story, it's a fascinating contrast. And the music, again, it's made by these sort of like session players or composers who are just like grinding out music every week. So they can't exactly, you know, orchestrate it as well as a John Williams score or anything. But like, man, they didn't slack off either. They were really like being pretty professional about it. So kind of unique in television if you think about it.
Yeah, Vaporwave has a look, but so does Unsolved Mystery synthwave, like, and it's like entirely anachronistic. Like you've got this like update, but like if you're trying to associate an image in your mind of Unsolved Mysteries, it's either Robert Stack or it's like a alarmingly permed woman in a room that is entirely wood paneled on a couch that looks like it's made of fucking macrame, holding a cat that does not want to be held. And talking about a relative that has been missing for 30 years. Like, that is the music video for every Unsolved Mysteries track. It has a very weird visual aesthetic. Like, when they're not doing the creative Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman past lives recreations. It is just like ugly Midwesterners talking to a very old camcorder.
Oh, yeah. The other thing, and we'll talk about the music more specifically here in a bit, but the other thing that was really shocking on my rewatch, how many of the like missing people, unsolved crime stuff just seemed like local police incompetence. And they're just like talking about it like it's nothing. They're like, yeah, the husband came home and his jeans were covered in blood, but he said it was a deer, so we didn't test or question him in any way. Anyway, help us find her killer. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So weird. So weird how many of those cases are like, well.
Yeah, like you're alarmed by how bad the investigative practices are, but they still talk like shitty cops on like fucking Forensic Files or an actual true crime show that's not full of alien abductions and bullshit. Like it's like, oh, we visually ascertained the suspect had guns in both hands and was wearing a shirt that said I did it. We let him go.
Yep. And that's not just for that. You know, a lot of the ghost stories are like, I walked over by the drafty window and it was cold, so I think that was the spirit of LMA talking to me.
And then sad violin music in the background.
Yeah. Oh, man.
The thing is about Unsolved Mysteries is that it not only laid the foundation for, I think, synthwave, but it also laid the foundations for like the explosion now for true crime, especially in podcasts as sort of a genre. So like, you know, reading through the YouTube comments of the songs of the theme song and just some of the albums, because there are whole albums of its music out now. There are people who like, yeah, when I was a kid, I was terrified by it. But the next day at the playground, we would all talk about the murders. And it got to the point where our teachers had to warn us not to stop watching if it got too scary. Yeah, there's one comment where a guy was like, yeah, as a kid, I found out the world didn't work the way I thought it did. Like, you know, murders could go unsolved. People could just disappear into thin air and never be found. Yeah, I do want to say that on the flip side, though, there is a fan wiki for Unsolved Mysteries for every single episode. And they update it. So like you could, you know, this episode aired 1993. Find out if they actually did solve this mystery. So you could actually rewatching these episodes, because they're not only on Amazon Prime, a bunch of them are on YouTube as legit things. So you can just go and check out to see if they did catch the guy or find the murderer or whatever. I find that pretty fascinating, but we should probably first start talking about the theme song, because that's sort of what got all the hype. There's hundreds of hours worth of music to talk about, but like, well, at least a couple hours worth that have been released.
Well, there's hundreds of hours of remixed versions of this theme song because it's so seminal. Like, yeah.
I've been waiting to play a sample of it. So if you're one of those people who's scared of the theme song, enjoy. So that is the absolute baller theme of Unsolved Mysteries. Man, it just sounds so good. Like that little piano ostinato. And then those synths that Caleb loves to recreate.
Everyone loves to recreate.
Everyone loves
all
it. You're right.
Right-thinking people love to recreate.
Everyone loves a good pitch bend.
And the piano, because he's clearly inspired or riffing on the Halloween arpeggio. What I find is, so again, like we've mentioned before, culture is a conversation. And so we go from John Carpenter and the Halloween score to Unsolved Mysteries. So kids who would never see Halloween because like they weren't hardcore horror fans and it was an R-rated movie would still be exposed to these same musical ideas through Unsolved Mysteries. So like how many synthwave fans are really fans because of Unsolved Mysteries rather than they were able to watch Halloween?
Yeah, I always suspected Unsolved Mysteries was part of the Carpenter propaganda machine that rules our media space.
They just never got to make the Sutter Kane episode.
Yeah. Well, I heard they did.
Oh, no.
We're living in it. There's a lot written about this. It was composed by Gary Malkin and one other person, and then a synthesizer expert. I don't know what you want to call them.
Isn't there a synth professor? Don't you guys have a title now for?
Yeah, there's synth professor from Halloween.
Synth professor.
There we go. Might be a high title.
Yeah. Michael Boyd is the other composer for it. Yeah. Charles Judge was the guy on synths. Yeah, we couldn't find out exactly what synthesizers were used, what exact hardware was made for it, but they did. Gary Malkin in another interview did mention he used a synclaver in that time in his career, which is a synthesizer that could sample real instruments and play them back. So you could like create a real orchestral sound by sampling the instruments. And it's like $25,000 to $200,000, up to $200,000 in the 90s. It was, you know, you had to be a professional.
It's a lot of Super Nintendos.
So basically done by the you know, part of the sort of invisible legion of session players and composers that create most of the music we hear in TV and movies, but are not like known. They're not John Williams or David Horner or any of these other, you know, name, quote unquote, but they're still very talented, you know, musicians. They're using some tricks. In the interview or this article, they talk about using the tritone, which you could probably explain a lot better than I could, Burke. Well, definitely.
The tritone is an interval in music that's 3 whole steps, tritones, 3 tones. And it has like this weird, I'll link to an Adam Neely video about it that's way better than I could even do. But it sort of has like a famous history of being kind of unsettled because it doesn't really fit into like traditional functional harmony where chords kind of push you towards dissonance or resolution. It's just sort of there. It's like an unsettling interval. It's used in like a lot of horror music and metal and stuff to kind of create those darker tones and feels. There's like a lot of anachronistic myth around it about like, oh, it's banned by the church in the Gregorian era for summoning the devil. It's the devil in music, diabolos in musica. So like a lot of that's nonsense, but it is one of these unsettling, lesser used intervals outside of certain genres. But you hear it a lot in what we do just because of its function.
Malkin did mention in interviews, does mention that they would get tons of letters from parents saying, could you change the theme? It's scaring my kids. Which, of course, they did.
They're like, yeah, we'll turn it up next season. Like, yeah. I fucking love it. Yeah, you talk about the invisible horde of session musicians, and about the only thing I can contribute anymore because I'm not up on music theory is like I used to play in a lot of jazz groups because I had a bass and those are expensive. I can really tell these guys as you listen through the different seasons like came to play together because like you can tell when they get bored. It is always the like gold panning or treasure hunting or past live ones.
Yeah.
Because like they'll go to like this root notes and like a fiddle getting lost in the wood sounds. And then you'll have like a new version of the update theme, which is entirely unnecessary. It's just make work. And it's in like fucking 5/3 or some like exotic time signature. It's like they're bored and they want to fucking rock out and do weird shit. And it's only going to be on for 15 seconds while an ugly person from the Midwest makes up a story. So let's have a good time with it. And so they like, yeah, you can tell when like they're into it and when it's just another day of work. Or at least they could. Yeah.
So the off-kilter little bit actually helped me form a theory where I posit to you two that synth and chimes are the crab of the Unsolved Mysteries soundtrack and that everything eventually evolves to them. Given enough time.
Yeah.
Because there's so many bits where they'll be like, oh, here's some old timey, like out of tune piano playing coming around the mountain because they're doing some like, where's Curly's gold type story. And then they'll get about 30 seconds of it and they'll be like, oh no, wait, back to the creepy synths and wind chimes. And it does it every time.
I kind of wanted to talk about that as a general thing. Like the thing about Unsolved Mysteries is that like it is musically entirely meant to segment. It is entirely meant to individualize slices of this like wacky variety show of television that is no longer provided. And yet, ironically, when you listen to all of it, does the exact opposite. It is like every musical genre at once, and it is paced because it is all unsolved mysteries. I know one is a synth banjo and the other is like a synth like house rave or trip hop album. It is still always somehow distinctly one thing, and that is it is Unsolved Mysteries music, which is sort of amazing.
Yeah, they definitely developed a house style because like Malkin worked on the show for a long time. And then there was like 3 or 4 other people who also worked on the show. So they obviously like figured out like this is not going to be just stock music. We're not doing a royalty free, like library music. We're going to have a style. We're going to have a sound for Unsolved Mysteries. It's going to be this own house style. And they developed it and they stuck this sort of vocabulary. But yeah, the demands of the show are such that like they don't have much time and they got to establish a mood fast. The soundtrack for Unsolved Mysteries has to do a lot of the lifting to create the narrative tension because like the visuals definitely sometimes aren't.
You want to talk about haunted? Can you imagine watching an Unsolved Mysteries episode, not on mute, which I've done, but like with full audio, but no music track? It would just be so fucking haunting. It would be watching Cache. Like it'd be fucking terrible. Like I couldn't do it. Like,
it's like, oh, okay, happy couple going on vacation in Mexico. Go, you got 30 seconds, Oh, the killer's breaking in. Go, you got 20 seconds. Oh, this house is haunted as fuck. You got a minute for that shit. The drafty hallway, it's dark, it's blue. blue, we're using blue filters on the lights for, whatever. They had to establish mood and now.
Yeah, I did wonder if they wrote to the narration or vice versa.
That's a good question.
I'm guessing they were like full-time employees. This is one like a contractor thing. They had to be working hand in hand with the people who were cutting the video is the only way I could see this working, because it's very well like synced up in terms of like, this is the exact mood you want to create for this scene.
And I think in one of the interviews we found, which will be in the show notes, the guy says that after it moved to Lifetime in like 2001, 2 of the people left, and it was just like 2 of them of the original core 4. So there are clearly people tied to the show. In some like retainer capacity, at least.
I wonder if the paranormal stuff started coming in after it went to Lifetime, because I don't like the older shows.
No, that was in some of the 90s stuff too.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it was already there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lifetime is where Robert Stack kept rediscovering the spirit of Christmas by kissing a bespoke Christmas mug maker on a gazebo of a small New England town.
Mm-hmm.
It was a weird film. It was not that popular.
Oh, no.
But yeah, I kind of definitely, we mentioned the update music, but you need to hear the update music.
Oh, yes.
It's so good. They're always towards the end of each of these selections. So I always know when I'm about to switch like sides on the record because I hear the update outro music. So I guess we haven't really actually talked about where we're pulling this discussion from.
Mm-hmm.
So it's worth noting that at least 2 or 3 years ago, these were sort of curated and released on vinyl. So I actually bought them because I kind of expected them to be sold out, which is usually the deal when we talk about music on the show.
Mm-hmm.
But no, there are still pressings available. So I'll have a link to that. There's a guy, Ryan Graveface, who inked a deal to get all of the original DAT tapes from the creator, John Cosgrove, and selected out of these hundreds and hundreds of tapes, about 2 hours now they've released of curated music. So this is a vinyl release. If you like this, you can go get it, just for people to have a reference of what we're talking about. This is not just us digging through YouTube.
Yeah, someone did mirror them on YouTube. So,
which is actually really useful because there's sort of like a crowdsourcing effect where people will comment and be like, oh yeah, the thing at 10 minutes is from this episode, this segment. And I don't know if they're pulling that from the liner notes for the vinyl or if they just know that. But I think people do have some of these songs memorized, because there's one comment that was like, none of these releases include the Cleveland Railroad Killer segment. I was really hoping for that music. I'm like, so who knows?
Yeah, I kind of wish they would do more, because if there's hundreds of tapes, God, there's enough you could just put together like a 24/7 music stream of fucking Unsolved Mysteries music. Just draw a picture of Robert Stack wearing headphones, right?
Anime Robert Stack.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I also love how there was zero attempt to label the tracks in any way that would be archivally useful.
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering if some of this is from the liner notes, which I'll find out when I get physical copies. But
like, you could have just put timestamps in and it would have been infinitely more context.
Yeah, some of the YouTube things, if you look down in the comments, someone just commented, he's like, this is what the timestamps are. And of course, I don't know if they're just guessing or if they're just, what the deal is with that. But that's what I would use for some of them. Yeah, just a surprising variety, but yeah, still going back to the same style. Like, I think your comment on it like being like crabs, like evolving into crabs, it just always goes back to the style. Like, they just have to finish that way.
They do. I will say it is interesting, sort of to what we were talking about earlier. How many songs do have strong segment vibes of like, oh, I know immediately why they're playing this. I could just see the episode, not the specific episode, but the segment so clearly in my mind. So even just the second track on the first volume, the first side, after the theme subsides, it's this like cheesy ass, like violin music, like sappy violin music. And I immediately know that it's like the setup for some idyllic flashback before the mystery starts. Because it's always like so sudden because they don't have a lot of time. It's always like Jane and Bill had the perfect American wedding until they were found burned to death in their car in their backyard. Like, oh, okay, Robert.
Or like they met before the war and then he just like didn't come back to marry her. And now they're old. So they're going to be reunited for a cheese sandwich or whatever the grips for fucking Unsolved Mystery paid the people to show up on it. Yeah.
I mean, but there's some variety. There are a couple tracks that when I started like thinking about them and like I just listened to the whole thing, all 2 hours of it, and just sort of soak it in. But like when I started going back to individual bits to sort of like see if there were any highlights, like there was one that was labeled Cemetery Boston Strangler on volume 2B. It was kind of Silent Hills, like the guitar and like a piano. And it kind of has a Silent Hill soundtrack vibe to it.
Yeah, when they do ominous tones, they do them really well. It's just that they can rarely resist just a fucking ripper of a bass line or drum beat. I think they were just doing like trying to do creepy X-Files music, but they just had too active of a rhythm section. Like they didn't, the drummer and the bassist didn't want to just sit around. So like, what if we made this slap? You could still doing like wind sounds and shit in the background, whatever.
They kind of go ambient sometimes too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like you see hints of that, like we're going for X-Files, but it always turns into Unsolved Mysteries.
Like Australian UFO from volume 2 1A. So it had a very kind of new agey feel for me, like harps and synth pad. It felt like the password screen of like a JRPG on the Nintendo. Like it's like, oh yeah, kind of meditative. I quite like that. It's whatever the narrative needs. And man, Unsolved Mysteries just goes all over the place.
Oh yeah. The thing I appreciate about it on re-listen, maybe one of the reasons why it does make such a compelling discussion for the show is so much of this. If I had never heard of Unsolved Mysteries or watched it or anything, you could convince me that this is a Cryo Chamber album.
Oh, yeah.
It's just got that dark ambient feel to it. Like it's a little short. Like it would be weird because the tracks are much shorter than on like a typical modern dark ambient album, but it just feels very similar. And I don't know. I wish we had found out maybe more about its production because there's so much of it is like really, really nice 90s synth, but at the same time, it still feels ahead of its time. And I'm wondering, like, if I have the causality on that backwards, is stuff like Cryo Chamber trying to imitate those synth sounds, or were they also just really, really good at getting the most out of what they had at the time?
Yeah, I mean, these composers were really cued into like what the sound of Hollywood was, what the sound of movies and television were. So they were just doing their own sort of variations on a theme, like we were talking like Halloween earlier, but like it's kind of like the second generation thing. The people are just going vibing because of that. So yeah, I don't know. It's a sort of a generational evolution of music. And honestly, I think this really isn't really, most of it's not dark ambient for me. It's more synthwave because like, again, the beat. Okay. I'd see this on like New Retro Wave or something like that, or a dark synth album.
Because it's not quite drony enough for you.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah. Especially being all over the place. Because there are definitely parts where I wrote, I think on Volume 2, Side 2B, I think I just wrote Spooky Chill Wave.
Well, like a lot of these tracks could be on, if there's a Hotline Miami 3, you could put in some of these tracks and like people like, oh man, is this Perturberator? This fucking slaps. Maybe a little too chill for Perturberator, but you get the idea.
I mean, you could definitely glitch some stuff out for the apartment music though. Like, yeah. Here's what blows my mind. Like, I actually think Unsolved Mysteries is a serious progenitor in terms of a different audio medium, which is like the true crime podcast. Like that is so big with our generation. And I often see it correctly examined from a feminist perspective, but not to be the Marxist in the room. But I think a part of it is also the fact that we all had Unsolved Mysteries on every channel, inconceivably, whatever, when we were growing up. But in creating that medium, it's kind of surprises to me that like there aren't more people doing this, because like seeing Robert Stack was never the appeal. I could read Wikipedia while a group of synth musicians just have fun behind me. Like that would be great. I would love to do that. And I think it would sell. But like it's a little odd that we've just gone to read the Wikipedia article. We've lost the musical accompaniment, because that's what made Unsolved Mysteries magical. And that's what makes most true crime podcasts just people reading Wikipedia at you. You need both, is my understanding after revisiting The Grandfather. Yeah.
A rich multimedia tapestry.
Yeah, because if you the synthwave, like the story is like this terrible thing happened, but the synthwave is saying it could happen to you next. So like pay attention. You might need to know, did this dude get murdered by the mafia, or did he fake his own death, or did he have someone? Did he kill himself and he had an accomplice to burn the car after he shot himself? Who can say? Who can say?
I like the idea that that's what My Favorite Murder is missing. It's not individually threatening enough. Like, they're coming for you,
Sarah. If they ever talk about my murder, make sure it slaps.
Yeah. Commission too mellow to compose my murder.
The True Crime Podcast also and Unsolved Mysteries also shows the element you also need is the right narrator, because like after Robert Stack died, or, you know, he retired, they just never really replaced him. Like there's Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix now, but they don't have a Robert Stack. There's no like narrator guy. They're just like, here's this thing. Here's this unsolved mystery. Yeah.
Okay. I've not gotten around to watching.
Yeah. I watched the first episode. I mean, it was an unsolved mystery. All right.
If there is not a man in a flasher coat walking out of a steam vent in what is obviously a sound-staged alley, I don't want any part of it.
That's interesting, because it's the same production team as the original run, but I wonder if they just, I don't know, because I'm worried they just did it as a nostalgia thing, because I guess they brought in the Stranger Things executive producer to work on it.
I mean, you absolutely have to. Like, how do you do UFO stories anymore? Like, and then he didn't bring out his phone for reasons. Like, how many times can you hear that?
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, I mean, the thing is, without the narrator, without like a central guy, it becomes even cheaper to make, because then you could like assign it to freelance crews every single time. And you can outsource everything. You don't even have to have a travel budget. Just like look up who's available in a given area, have them shoot some interviews and record some footage of the crime scene, and then like go, edit it yourself. But they did update the theme. They used a new composer to update it. So, but it's still pretty similar. I suppose we should put a sample of the new Netflix version of Unsolved Mysteries theme in there. Yeah, so it's not really an unsolved mystery then. It's just, well, it was cheaper to do this. And it's Netflix. It's the same thing they do to all adaptations of existing properties. They make it worse.
The killer was cost reduction all along.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But, the original Unsolved Mysteries will be with us forever, because a lot of these mysteries are never going to be solved. All the witnesses are now dead. And the criminals that got away,
and 80% of them never happened in reality in the first place. So make it very easy. Case closed there.
Yeah. The ghost one I can solve for you. I can do all the ghost ones. I can knock them out in the afternoon for you.
But the music will definitely live on. So if you're not familiar with the show, watch an episode or two on YouTube to get a sense of it. But the music, man. Yeah, again, where would true crime and synthwave be without Unsolved Mysteries? Because all those kids, they couldn't watch the great horror movies, but they could watch some basic cable. And it wasn't R-rated, so everyone could watch it. It was still really compelling for a dumb kid who didn't know any better. So yeah, thank you, Unsolved Mysteries, for introducing the world to more of the world to weird-ass synthesized music and chimes and that trumpet. Any final thoughts, Caleb?
Well, I'm just going to cut to the outro sample from that. Yep, give me a few more takes.
Burke, any final thoughts for yourself?
Oh, no, I can't top that. No, we're going out on that.
All right. Thanks for listening to this episode. We had a lot of fun prepared for it because we love us some Unsolved Mysteries. But our next episode is also going to be a lot of fun because Cryo Chamber has released their next Cthulhu Mythos collaboration album. Last year was Haster. Now it's Yig. Who is Yig, you say? Yig's a Lovecraftian god of, well, snakes. Just snakes. It's, you know, we have the god of the nuclear, Azathoth nuclear god of at the center of the universe. We have Nyarlathotep, the crawling chaos, but then there's snakes.
Cool.
Yeah, but the album sounds very good. I've listened to the first half, and the second half was just released today as of this recording, so we'll have some time to absorb it. Talk about slithering and cetars and whatnot. I don't know. So that's something to look forward to. And of course, you can find us on social media at Night Clerk Radio. I am at Ross Payton, and Burke is at Burke McBurkinson, and Caleb.
I am at Hebanon G. Cal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also the author of Red Markets, and I'm on a show with Ross called The Mix Six.
Mm-hmm.
And I write for a game called Delta Green sometimes, which is probably the most thematically consistent plug to put within Unsolved Mysteries.
And for our next episode about Yig, the album.
Yep.
But yeah, thanks for listening. If you like it, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or whatever you listen to for podcasting. Tell your friends, tell your family, and share this episode. If you know someone who's traumatized by Unsolved Mysteries theme song, this episode is cathartic. They aren't alone. We'll help them. Wow, wow. Good night for Night Click Radio. Thanks for listening.